Hi, hola. Hello. I'm outside here at Stephan Plus. 咁我而家喺呢一個聖士提反大教堂出邊啦。咁 ahora estoy en la plaza de no sé, el catedral de Stephan. Se llama Stephan Plus. Entonces, caminé acá desde mi alojamiento por 2 horas y media. Sin embargo, caminé muy lento y con un papel en mis manos que dice nosotros no vamos a parar decir sobre el verdadero, sobre lo que pasó en el 4 de junio 1989。咁頭先我就喺Airbnb 就開始咁就一個人自己遊行啦咁樣。咁我就揸住一張紙，咁上面就寫住平反64We will not stop telling the truth。咁我就由西站一路行到嚟呢一個Stephan Plus， 咁就行咗2個半鐘，但係我係即係超慢嗰啲啦，尤其是特別嚟到市中心嘅時候係個個都遲咁行，咁我就好慢咁行啦，咁都有一啲人會即係留意嘅咁。So I started walking from West Bahnhof until here in Stephan Plus, and I walk really slow, like in contrast to other people who were walking next to me, and so like I did caught some attention. So a few people talked to me and asked me about it. 咁都有人係停低有問我啦，有同我傾交流啦咁樣。Hay algunas personas que pararon y me preguntaron sobre el tema, entonces para mí me sentí bueno. Hay 3 mujeres de España, hay un hombre de Beijing en China, él es un profesor en la Universidad de Beijing, hay un mamá de acá, creo que ella es de Austria, de Viena, y sí, también hubo un hombre quien me tomó video, sin embargo no me preguntó o habló。咁有3個西班牙嚟嘅女士同我傾偈啦，問我咩事啦咁樣。咁有一位係北大嘅老師啦，咁有一位係本地嘅媽媽啦，咁跟住佢真係好好，佢 BB 其實跑開咗，但係佢都係要問我咁樣，佢離遠望住個 BB。咁就另外有一個白人嘅男人就拍我啦，咁但係佢就冇問我嘢，冇同我傾偈嘅。So there were 3 ladies from Spain, and then there was one, I think like one mother, like she's from here, I think, and then like there's one professor from the Beijing University, and then there is this other white guy who took video on me or like pictures of me, but he didn't talk to me, so I would do the reading, and then I might continue to sit or stand a bit more here around to see if other people would talk to me。咁我會讀完書之後，咁我繼續喺呢一度就會留多一陣啦。咁可能坐，可能企啦咁樣樣。咁就睇下仲會唔會有人同我傾嘢咁樣樣。Después de la lectura hoy, voy a quedarme acá poco más y sí, vamos a ver si alguien quiere hablar conmigo. Entonces, vamos hoy. 咁我哋今日就開始啦。We are only going to read this in English. 咁我今日只係會讀呢一篇嘢係讀英文嘅咁樣樣。咁vamos a leer sobre por la página web de Amnistía International。咁呢篇嘢咧係喺國際特赦組織嘅網站上面啦，咁樣樣咁。讀完之後，我會簡單即係用廣東話講我讀咗啲乜嘢啦咁。Después de la lectura voy a explicar poco que leo. Entonces, vamos， 咁我哋就開始啦。Read to Resist, Day 387。當閱讀也是抗爭，第387日。What really happened in Tiananmen Square in 1989? It has been over 33 years since hundreds, if not thousands, of unarmed, peaceful pro-democracy protesters were killed in Beijing, and the arrest of tens of thousands of demonstrators in cities across China. The protesters, based in Tiananmen Square in central Beijing, were peacefully calling for political and economic reform. In response, the Chinese authorities responded with overwhelming force to repress the demonstrations. Military units were brought in, and unarmed protesters and onlookers were killed en masse. The Chinese government has never acknowledged the true events surrounding the Tiananmen massacre. It remains a contentious topic in China, with authorities banning all mention of the protest even today. The Chinese authorities warn everyone to forget that they killed hundreds, if not thousands, of unarmed peaceful pro-democracy protesters in Tiananmen Square in 1989. Many refuse to forget Tiananmen Square. Human rights lawyer and activist Chow Hang-tung, who is wrongly imprisoned in Hong Kong, is one of them. For many years, the human rights lawyer and activist Chow Hang-tung has helped to organize a peaceful annual remembrance of the Tiananmen Square crackdown. In 2021, after she posted on social media to encourage people to light candles at home, Chow Hang-tung was unjustly imprisoned in Hong Kong. Who was Tank Man? Who photographed him? The most famous photo of Tiananmen Square is known as Tank Man. The Tiananmen protests were immortalized in Western media on the 5th of June 1989 through the image of a lone man in a white shirt carrying shopping bags, facing an imposing column of military tanks sent by the government to disperse protesters. The man is known simply as Tank Man. His identity has never been confirmed. Tank Man would not let the military vehicles pass. He succeeded. Eventually, he was pulled out of the way of danger by onlookers. But the image of unarmed man versus tank quickly came to symbolize the struggle of the Tiananmen protesters. Peaceful protests met with military might. It demonstrates one man's extraordinary courage, standing up in front of a row of tanks, being prepared to sacrifice his own life for the sake of social justice. Stuart Franklin, Tank Man photographer. Stuart Franklin took the Tank Man photograph. Events leading up to Tiananmen Square crackdown. From April 1989, people from across China gathered in Beijing's Tiananmen Square to mourn the death of the Liberal Communist Party leader, Hu Yaobang, and share their frustrations about the slow pace of promised reform. The gathering turned into peaceful protests, which spread across the provinces of China as demonstrators, mainly students, began to call for an end to official corruption and for political and economic reform. How many people demonstrated? 1 million on the streets. On the 13th of May, hundreds of student protesters in Tiananmen Square went on hunger strike in order to push for talks with Communist Party leaders. It is estimated that 1 million people joined the protests in Beijing to express their support for the students on hunger strike and to demand reform. What was the government's response? Martial law. Party leaders visited the student protest on the 19th of May. The protesters ended their hunger strike that evening. However, the next day, martial law was declared in Beijing to firmly stop the unrest. In the weeks that followed the declaration of martial law, hundreds of thousands of people once again protested on the streets of Beijing, with similar demonstrations taking place in cities across China. Military opened fire on civilians. The troops are by no means targeted at the students. Under no circumstances will the troops harm innocent people, let alone young students. Official New Chinese Agency, 1st of May 1989. Overnight on the 3rd to 4th of June, the government sent tens of thousands of armed troops and hundreds of armored military vehicles into the city center to enforce martial law and forcibly clear the streets of demonstrators. The government wanted to restore order in the capital. As they approached the demonstrations, troops opened fire on the crowds of protesters and onlookers. They gave no warning before they started shooting. The first casualty in the square was rushed away. A girl with her face smashed and bloody carried spread eagle towards the trees. Another followed, a youth with a bloody mess around his chest. John Gittings, The Guardian. As the troops kept firing into the crowds, some of them running away were shot in the back. Others were crushed to death by military vehicles. No one knows the death toll from the Tiananmen that night. We took the wounded on stretchers and went down to the square. As we went down the side of the square, we saw soldiers with large plastic bags. They were putting people in the bags. I could not tell how many people. There were also people surrounded by soldiers, being kicked by them. I could hear shouts and the odd gunshot. I thought there were around 200 young people in early July. I heard the public security sources that they had all been executed on the 9th of June in the rural district near Beijing. They included students and residents of Beijing. Eyewitness account from a protester. Crackdown following protests. Immediately after the military crackdown, the Chinese authorities began to hunt down those involved in the demonstrations. Thousands of people were detained, tortured, imprisoned, or executed after unfair trials, charged with counter-revolutionary crimes. The Chinese authorities have never disclosed the total number of people detained, tried, or executed throughout China since the June 1989 crackdown. In a climate of terror which followed the crackdown, the relatives of those killed were not only unable to seek justice for their loss, they were even unable to mourn openly the dead, who were officially described as rioters. Tiananmen squares remain a banned subject in China. Tiananmen and the 1989 crackdown remains an official taboo topic in China. There is no official death toll. Attempts to discuss, commemorate, and demand justice for what happened have been forcefully curbed, with no public discussion allowed. Since 1989, many people have been imprisoned for commemorating events or questioning the official line. Human rights lawyer and activist Chow Hang-tung, arrested in Hong Kong, is one of them. So, this is a reading of the Amnesty International article. 咁啱啱我讀完嘅咧，就係國際特赦組織咧，就係寫嘅一篇文章，係關於1989年喺天安門發生乜嘢事啦。特別有提到周幸彤嘅。咁特別今日都要同大家講嘅就係周幸彤其實咧喺而家係喺呢一個坐緊監啦咁佢其實咧係喺牢獄之中咧係進行緊34小時嘅絕食嘅行動嘅。咁但係佢呢一個嘅和平嘅絕食行動咧，就係被呢一個嘅懲教署懲罰啦。咁佢哋咧就將佢咧踢咗入去咧，就係呢一個單獨囚禁咁樣樣。咁其實咧單獨囚禁咧喺國際法上面咧，其實已經講咗咧係屬於一個係有違人道 主義同埋咧有為人權嘅一個嘅做法。咁基本上咧係唔可能咧用佢嚟到做一個懲罰啦，亦都唔可能咧係將人咧係長期咧係單獨囚禁嘅。咁其實咧好多我哋即係嘅手足啦，咁特別係47人案裡面嘅牽涉嘅手足咧，佢哋其實好多都係已經咧係受咗呢一個嘅單獨囚禁嘅呢一個咁樣嘅酷刑咧係好耐咁。So what was mentioned in the article about Chow Hang Tong is that she's already being sentenced to jail because like she was organizing or like she called for people to light candle in their own home and then said that she herself would be going to the Victoria Park and so like this sort of like in the eye of the government that is an incitement to people to subvert the government. Now what happened was right now in jail Chow is on a 34-hour hunger strike in commemoration of the Tiananmen massacres victims. And right now the correctional department punished her by putting her in solitary confinement. So this is like what is happening with Chow. So if you would really like to help her, please go to the Amnesty International webpage and sign for a petition. 咁如果大家係即係都仲會做簽聯署嘅事情咧，咁大家可以上去國際特赦組織佢哋嘅 page 揾周幸彤啦，咁佢哋係有呢一個嘅請願信咧，大家可以簽嘅。Lo que pasó en el 4 de junio 1989 fue hubo una protesta enorme en China y muchísimas personas fueron por la plaza de Tiananmen para exigir las reformas, las correcciones del gobierno, de las políticas, de la economía y también exigieron para las corrupciones. Sin embargo, el gobierno tomó una respuesta muy fuerte y bastante personas, bastante protestoras fueron matando, asesinando por objetivos del gobierno. No obstante, el Partido de Comunista China sigue mintiendo hasta hoy sobre todo lo que pasó este día. Y ahora muchísima gente en Hong Kong también están arrestados y detenidos en la cárcel por este tema, por realizar obras sobre el tema y solamente protesta silencio o en paz durante esta semana, estos días. Y una de las personas ahora en la casa por conmemoración de los asesinados en Tiananmen es Chow Hang Tong. Ella es en la cárcel ahora y hoy ella protesta con un hunger strike, como se dice, es como no come por 34 horas. Sin embargo, el gobierno ahora le toma en la casa sola. So, no sé cómo se dice, es como solitary confinement. Entonces, sí, no puede contactar nadie y está sola en una cárcel, una juela, no juela, sin embargo es como una caja, no sé, cárcel. Lo siento, mi español es muy mal. So please try and help talk about this and Google more facts on, you can have more facts on the Amnesty International, BBC.com, CNN.com, and history.com and also Britannia. 咁大家可以繼續就係去即係同我個朋友講啦，咁希望我哋即係繼續將真相就係傳承落去啦咁。So今日就嚟到呢度啦。termino ahora y sigo continuando acá para demostrar y protestar poco. Nos vemos mañana. 咁我哋聽日再見，See you again tomorrow. Bye bye.